This is the Perfect RIA, in case you didn't know. Bringing you all the strategies to help your business grow. Are you happy? Are you satisfied? Are you hanging on the edge of your seat? Sit back and listen in while you feel the beat, yeah!
If you have to ask, it's probably not moving the needle.
Welcome back, TPR listeners, to another amazing podcast of the Perfect RIA. And of course, I'm joined with the legendary Matthew Jarvis. What's going on, bud?
Oh, Mike, I just living the dream. Recently got back from a trip with a family. I know you did as well, and kind of a moment of calm before the next set of trips and adventures begin.
Jarvis, I was a little bit, not really commiserating, but kind of talking about, I had this illusion that when we built our house and we moved in, it's just, we're going to be a little bit more stable. We're going to stay here for longer, blah, 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 blah. No, we're traveling generally just as much. Just now we come home to a nicer house, which is just fantastic. And it is nice to kind of be home, relax a little bit, and then actually do things that move the needle. And it's one of the things that came up while I was on this trip. I was talking to another advisor beforehand. He's like, I told him I was going on vacation. He said, Mike, are you going on vacation or are you just living abroad for a period in time? I was like, that is a great distinction about kind of what the differences are. Like, are you unplugging completely in that total vacay mindset, or are you still going and doing things abroad? And we're going to save that to another episode that talks about kind of working remote and being abroad and other things. But it's really a great thing to think about. And then when you come back to the office after you've been out, what are you going to do? Because if you're anything like Jarvis and I, you get itching to get back to work. And then you immediately think about, at least Jarvis from a flurry of our text messages, you immediately think about, because I've been gone, nothing has been done, right? No needle has been moved. No increase has been there. I'm not there. So clearly nothing is taking place and nothing is happening. Oh my gosh, I better get back in and crack the whip. Or Jarvis, am I alone in that mindset?
No, you're definitely, we're definitely on the same page there. Though I was thinking, I recently spoke to a group of advisors. A lot of them didn't have any team members, right? It was just a pure solo. A lot of our listeners are that way as well. So
right. In
some cases, Mike, that could literally be the case, right? If you're an advisor of one, an army of one, when you're gone, in fact, nothing is happening. But either way, whether I think you're coming back from vacation or time away, whatever we're going to call that, or you've even just had a day where you realize you were pretty distracted, right? You need to really have a plan for when I'm feeling like nothing's happening, or when I've gotten distracted, what am I going to get back to that moves the needle?
Yeah, that's a really important thing. And so often we can get, we can play office, right? In fact, we got a phenomenal testimonial that came in the other day that somebody sent over to us that was really talking about this, of saying, hey, look, it's so easy. This came in from Les. It's so easy for us to play office. And he really appreciates us calling people out on it, because we all do it. And again, this isn't the pot calling the kettle blacky. Mm-hmm. We started this podcast as a way to help other advisors in areas that we're struggling with as well. And this is just one of those. We got to look at it and say, what moves the needle? And Jarvis, I think this is when we can come down to a difference in opinion and fact, or maybe feelings and reality could be another way to say this, right? There's some things that I can do that makes me feel good that I'm actually working, but I'm not doing a damn thing that's moving the needle.
Yeah, that's really our entire world, right? And we can sort of take a step back and say, well, where does that good feeling come from? Often that comes from the chemical dopamine, or now the name escapes me, right? But the dopamine receptors in your brain, which the entire world has been extensively programmed, especially the digital world, to give you those dopamines, those endorphins, right? So when you log into Facebook, you say, I'm doom scrolling social media, but I feel productive. And it's not moving the needle either, or at all. Mike, I was recently at Dave Ramsey's Leadership Summit, which was a lot of fun. And one of the things they talked about was having a list on your computer, like on a Post-it note. I love Post-it notes. That says, hey, when I get distracted, they didn't understand the concept of playing office. When I get distracted, what gets me back on the path? And so I think the same for us as advisors. We all fall into playing office. And when we catch ourselves playing office, a lot of times we just double back down on playing office. Well, yes. I've been reading the Wall Street Journal for an hour. I guess I'll just finish reading it. And then I'll read all the archives, and then I'll read all the comments on the archives, and then I'll kick over to Forbes and I'll read all those. But if we can catch ourselves and say, all right, I need to interrupt, right? So it could be, hey, I need to get up. Anytime I catch myself playing office, I need to get up out of my chair. I need to walk around the room. I need to get a cup of coffee, whatever it is. And before I sit back down, I need to say, hey, what would be the most effective thing for me to do?
Jarvis, and I think of this, if we put this in a client relationship, this is what I think budgeting is like, because all we're going to do is justify all of the time we just spent. And what do clients do with budgeting? What do we do with our own budgeting? We just justify all of the money in which we had spent, which is where it's a futile task to go through. And so I love that aspect of, if when you feel you're not doing something that's hyper productive, stop. Just stop, right? I'm not asking you to go back and criticize. My time machine is still broke. I'll let you know when I fix it. But until that time, it's just now I'm going to make decisions going forward. And so I keep mine in notes on my iPhone just because I work in different places, right? So if it's a sticky note at my office, it's like, well, crap, what did I write at my office? Now I'm at home, now I'm traveling, etc. So I got a sticky note and it's limited to 4 things. And there's 4 bullet points on there. And then if I'm going to put something else on, something has to come off. And I hate that, by the way. It's right now, I'm like, physically, it drives me nuts doing that, because I think all of these things are productive. But if I put on the list everything I thought was productive, the list would be never ending. And then I'd spend all my time scrolling through the list trying to pick something on the bloody list. So, but what I've found, if I limit it to kind of those 4 things, 1 through 4, these are the top things that I have found that help move the needle. So Jarvis, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Ooh,
what are things that you do that moves the needle?
Well, I thought you were going to let me call up my playing office. I'm like, oh, let's spend all day talking about this. Let's play office about
playing office.
Well, so I keep 2 lists. I keep a personal list and I keep a professional list, because when I'm having family time, I try to not working effectively can be playing office from your personal life, right? So I have a list on my phone for my personal life. So if it's a Sunday afternoon, like I don't ever work on the weekends, it's Sunday afternoon and I get kind of bored. All right, cool. Let me look at that list. But from a professional standpoint, some of my best work is in content creation. Now, this is easy to get confused here. It's easy for me to think, well, I need to research this, or I need to go play around in the software. Nope. I need a pen and a paper, or just a Google Doc with no formatting, and I need to create content. I need to write 5 articles. I need to write a blog post, whatever the case may be. But I have to make sure, Micah, that I'm doing that in a contained space. Otherwise, I'll catch myself playing office and I'll be doom scrolling LinkedIn and I'll be harassing industry experts who have no idea what they're talking about because they've never had a practice. I digress. You've just got to know where you're weak and where you're strong.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, right? And if this is something that you're having trouble with, because I get this question a lot with other advisors, is, well, I'm not sure what to write about or create content, or worst yet, we're going to come up with our own things we should write about. Now, why do I say that's the worst thing ever?
It is the worst thing.
It is the worst thing, right? Because if I come up with my own ideas, I am going to get so collegian on something. I'm going to drive into such hyperbolic details about something that 99% of people just don't care about, but I think is really cool. I'm going to geek out on it, right? And that's not what my listeners want to hear. That is not what my clients want to hear about. They want me to figure out all the stuff and simplify it down for them. So always I go back to, what are the top questions you have received from clients? Go answer those. That's what you need to do. And in client meetings, again, I say this again and again, on the left-hand side of my homework sheet, there's a spot and I write down my client questions that I get and I go through. So if I get a stumbling block and I'm like, I don't know what my client asked me for my last surge, I can pull up my homework sheets and I can go and look, and I look at 2 or 3 and I see a very simple theme and boom, there's content.
Another one on my list, Micah, is reading books. And so
Yes.
like everything, it exists on a spectrum. Right. But I find myself, if I'm playing office and I don't really feel like I've got a lot of drive, if I can take a step back, step away from my computer, pick up a physical book and sit and read it. One of my favorite go-tos for that is Tim Ferriss's Tools of Titans. And it's abstracts from all of his podcasts. And I can flip that open to any random page, read an abstract of his podcast interview, and it kind of helps me recenter. Like, all right, what am I trying to accomplish here? And then when you step back is often when you see things the clearest. When you've been sitting at your desk staring at your computer for 10 hours, you're not seeing anything clear. When I can step back and I can reflect and say, all right, what are the greats doing in whatever field? And then stop, Mike, back to your list. All right, what are the 3 things I need to get done this week? What are the 3 things that will move the needle today? And then march forward with those.
Yeah, I love that. Now, one of the things that, it's going to sound kind of funny, but one of the things I do keep on my list, Jarvis, is technology efficiency. And this could very well be playing office. So I want to jump on that one right there. There's some times where you need to, I'm not in a mental space where I'm going to be good at creating content. Like I wish I could turn on that light like all the time, but sometimes it's just not there, right? And so, okay, but I still need to make sure I'm not just playing Office. What can I do? Well, one of the things I'm good at is looking at our technology stack, looking at our processes and say, great, what things can we clean up for the team? And so my justification, now you can push back on me if this is playing Office, my justification is sometimes I can go and look at our team stack. What are they doing? How are they using things, et cetera? And how do we refine this? How do we streamline this process? How do we make this even better going forward? So if I need a little outlet in playing Office, that's one that I can use and I can go to and says, you know what, I'm going to look at our technology effectiveness. What things can we tweak? What can we do? I feel like I can control that. I can own that, and I can make a pretty positive impact.
The other thing that I highly recommend is on that list is whatever your prospecting repetitions are. Right. So for me, when I'm growing my practice, it's centers of influence. So I say, great. Every time I find myself playing Office or not being productive, or I'm in a slump, or I don't feel like doing this, cool. How many of those reps have I done? For me, it was always contact 5 a week. Okay, how many of those have I done? Oh, well, it's Thursday. I haven't done any. Cool. Let me quit playing Office. Turns out I spent the whole week playing Office. Let me stop everything else and put those 5 reps in. And it can be, again, whatever your reps are for that, you've got to make sure you're getting those in. And that's typically what goes off of the table first. The way I can immediately tell an advisor is playing Office is their prospecting sucks. So I say, oh, how many prospects did you physically speak with this week? None. What about last week? None. What about the week before? None. All right, all you're doing is playing Office. How do you know? I didn't tell you what I'm doing. You told me what you're not doing, which means you're filling that time playing Office. The exception would be, I suppose, if you're in Surge, right? Typically prospecting falls off a little bit when you're in Surge, depending on how many reps you're doing. Same thing. Same thing when you have a gap during Surge. Here, I'm on a rant here. If you say, boy, I normally have 5 meetings during the day and today I only have 2, well, I'll just end up screwing around playing Office. Nope, that's a great time to call those other clients, the ones that didn't come in, or send them a quick Loom video. So you always want to have this list of what are reps I can do that are going to move the needle versus I'm just going to kind of screw around.
And you've heard this from other people as well, which is really good. But if you like playing Office, right, if that is a reward for you, well, fantastic. Get your other stuff done, then go play your Office, right? So if you got to send out 5 prospect videos, 5 Loom videos, contact 5 COIs, whatever it is, you need to get that done first thing in the morning before you go off and do other things. And that'll be your release. And if you crush all the things you need to do and you want to go play a little Office, knock yourself out, right?
Yeah, of course.
We all do it at some point, but it's about being hyper intentional about it.
Yeah, a lot of this boils down to as well where you start your day, right? So if you come in and you're just going to do kind of whatever comes up and whatever alarm goes off and check your email, heaven forbid, or look at your social media, right? That's going to set your day up for absolute failure because you've already told your brain, hey, listen, whenever we can get a cheap shot of dopamine, that's what we're going to do. Versus you come in, the old Brian Tracy, it's funny that the rules of success have always been the same and they will always be the same.
It's so funny.
I need to come in, I need to eat the frog, whatever is the most difficult thing to do, whatever I'm least looking forward to. And so for me, a lot of that is before I turn my computer on to look at the physical calendar I've written down for the week, because I know as soon as my computer gets on, my brain's going to be drawn to these dopamine shots, where if I look at my physical list and say, all right, what are the most important things? If I get nothing else done today except for this or this, will that move the needle? And it will.
Yeah, 100% agreed. Jarvis, one of the things that I think is really what we should really focus on is we read this 10X is easier than 2X book, right? And really talking about those things about what are you need to do that's the most valuable for your time. So we talked about one thing that was there, which was prospecting. That's the most valuable use of an advisor time. What else is on that list? Because a really quick way to find out if you're playing Office, again, is what you said. What are the top things that you can do to create value? And if you're not doing those, everything else is playing Office. So we got prospecting as number 1. I'm going to say client meetings is definitely going to be number 2 on that list, right? And these aren't in an order of priority, by the way. These are just the top things, however you're going to set that. But client meetings is definitely going to be number 2. What's number 3?
Number 3, at least the third one that comes to my mind, is creation of value adds. So we talk about value adds typically on a quarterly basis, but there's weeks of work that go into creating value adds, right? So as this airs, right, the new quarter isn't very far away, right? In fact, so here we are, end of March. Next week is our webinar on the one big mistake advisors make to keep them from doubling their practice, and then it's a new quarter, right? And we like to have our value adds ready every quarter. We're just coming through a surge right now. Those take time to create. It takes time to create them. It takes time to get the data in. It takes time to quality control them. It takes time as the advisor to practice how you're going to present them. All these things take time. It's not time spent scrolling through social media, right? It's saying very intentional time block. I'm going to work on this value add for the next 2 hours.
Yeah, super good. Now, quick little hack on that, selfish plug, just join Invictus, right? And then we're going to tell you exactly what the value add should be, how to present them, how to taco in with your team, and kind of walk through that. So that could be a really good hack for you.
Definitely shortcuts it a lot. I've spent a lot of hours trying to invent value adds. It's nicer to see what somebody else is doing.
Yep. And Jarvis, I'm going to say that so we have those three. The other one I'm going to put on there is strategic planning. Now, we got to be careful this doesn't turn into playing office, but you need to be looking at things in the long term. So I'm going to go back to something that you said and kind of pull on that thread a little bit. If you said if you show up to your day and it's being super reactive, right, then you are playing office. You're not on top of things. Now, there's always little things that come up, right, and those need to be, you need a spot to address those. But your week should be fully planned out. When are you in the office and when do you leave the office? You know, I like to be done by kind of that 11 a.m. Alaska time when I'm in non-surge stuff. I get up early, I work out, I get all of my work stuff done before, and then once my kids are done with school, we're out and go do family time. Fantastic. What does that look like for you? But then how are we being very strategic about it? So an example of this, my calendar next week is already filled out on the time slots that I want available to do things. I'm not waiting to the day of to say, I wonder what I should do today. I'm not even doing it the day before. I'm doing it weeks in advance. And this helps my team as well be able to look at the calendar. Again, I really want to be the leader I need to be in the next 5 years. I need to be this year. So part of that is setting that example with our team, is saying, hey, don't be reactive. We need to pre-plan things out so you know what's happening. So our team knows what to expect so they can be hyper effective. The same thing with my time. I need to help my team build that as well.
No, that's really good, Mike. It brings to mind the idea of deep work, right? The idea of focus, all of these things. So a real indication that you're playing office is that you're jumping between tasks. And we dramatically underestimate the productivity killer that is. We talked a few weeks ago on a podcast, if we had to double our productivity, we would force our computer to only allow one browser at a time, right? Now, not maybe literally one, because maybe I need to look at two things on two screens to bring them together. Right. But how many times have you clicked through all your internet tabs to try to find the one tab that was the thing that you're working on, and you're clicking past 15 other tabs that you haven't touched all day, or for some people all week? And even just that effort of clicking through is wasting time. But the mental effort of like, oh yeah, I still have that thing. I still have that thing. I still have that thing. That alone is just an enormous time waster. Never mind if you're getting pop-ups at the same time, or you have some news feed going at the same time, right? So playing office is super mischievous. Like it comes up, it rears its head everywhere. And it's rarely one big thing. It's often 1,000 little things.
So when I'm doing little things, so if I'm not like in a client meeting, in a team meeting, a prospect meeting, et cetera, Jarvis, one of the things that I like to do is if I'm worried about I'm going to get sucked into work, that I'm going to be late for my next meeting, I can't dedicate my time to that task because I'm so worried about the clock and the calendar. I keep watching my watch. I keep looking at it, right? Making sure I'm not going to be late for it. So I just get in this habit about setting up good alarms and reminders on my phone. If I just set up, says, fantastic, I want to be done 10 minutes before my meeting so that way I can get ready for the next meeting and be super productive for it. And I set that alarm. And I got to say, that's such a simple thing, but it's so mentally freeing. I set the alarm, I look at it, I confirm the time, I put my phone down, and boom, I am head down in that task, whatever I need to do, just to crush it. And then generally I know it's a good work session when that alarm goes off and it kind of startles me, right? And I said, oh crap, yeah. I totally lost track of time because I was so zoned in that activity. And it's amazing the work I can get done when I do that versus the time where I choose not to set the alarm. It's like, oh, that's not that hard. It's only 15 minutes. I don't need to set an alarm. I can just watch the clock, etc. I get nearly not the same work level done. And that goes back to that concept of deep work, allowing your primary brain to focus on one thing and get involved in it.
Yeah, that's a great, Mike, indicator. Anytime you're not working against a time restraint, you're playing office. If I just had to make some rules to how to know you're playing office, if you're doing multiple things at once, you're playing office. If you're not working up against a time constraint, right? If you haven't said, hey, I have this hour to work on this, or these 3 hours to work on this, whatever the case is, you're playing office because Parkinson's law is destroying your work. That's why people say, well, Matthew, how can you get a financial plan done in 1 hour? Easy. I set a 1 hour time limit for it. And I have to get it done, or I have to come back to it later. Personal development, Mike, it comes to mind. You and I are incredible advocates of personal and professional development. It is an easy place to play office. If you're midway through the day and you think, you know what, instead of doing prospect calls, I should go read the latest, whatever blog post by whomever, that's playing office. That needs a place to live. For me, historically, that had always been Mondays. So anytime anything came across my desk or I heard of anything I wanted to study more about, I would put that on my Monday list of things to read. Now, when I got to Monday, I could then decide, wait a second, did I really want to learn this? Or was this my brain trying to find an easy dopamine hit? But again, you can play Office by doing personal development if it's not in a predetermined block of time.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. That is such a key thing right there about not doing multiple tasks at the same time and getting down. And while this seems so simple, we are all so guilty of these things. And it's another thing, after you've done it for a week or two, go to your team and see where your team is doing it. Because again, they're wasting a lot of their time in this same aspect, in the same thing of playing Office. By the way, if your team, if you don't have like a quarterly book read on your team, that's a really great thing to do. Us as advisors, I'm like, why isn't it a weekly book thing? Like, why are we waiting a quarter, right? It's not that hard. Just read a book. It doesn't quite work the same level. So putting a quarterly book read with your team is just fantastic. Bigger things for them to achieve and do and kind of review and go through. Because if you come in and tell your team this, at least that's what happens in my office, right? If I come in and say, who am I that knows these things, right? I'm here every single day. Versus the prophet is not recognized in their own village. If I bring in an outside expert coming in, now all of a sudden, oh my gosh, Micah, did you know you shouldn't have multiple tabs open at the same time? Really? Tell me more about this, right? All the same things we've been preaching to the team. So bring in those outside books, bring in those outside resources, because the better effective your team is going to be, the better effective you are. Now, if you are an advisor of one, we need to have a conversation about when are you going to hire your next assistant? Whether
Today. I'm sorry. Maybe it was a pop quiz.
I was going to say this week, but sure. Yeah, go for it. Today, hire them now, right? Go get a virtual assistant. Yes, you're going to pay more per hour. You're looking at the wrong thing. And I looked at the wrong thing for so long on this, but it's freeing up your time. Another thing, when you hire that assistant, by the way, you're going to say, hey, this only takes me an hour to do. It should only take them an hour. Wrong. It takes you an hour to do because you know exactly what outcome you want. You have been doing this for years and your mind is focused on this. It is going to take 4 to 5 times longer for them to do the same tasks it takes you. And then you're like, well, why am I paying for them to do it? Because it takes so much more time. Because your time should be focused on the things that are hyper valuable, which is, what do we talk about? Prospecting, client meetings, value add, strategic planning. That's what your time needs to be focused on. Everything else should be delegated out. That is how you're going to grow your practice.
Mike, another warning sign that I'm playing Office is if I'm following a proven strategy for success, or if I've gotten sucked into somebody's sexy theory. Now, again, let me dive this one a little bit further. You and I recently, I guess it's been a little bit now, we saw somebody's proposal of an ideal work week. So this was some industry commentator whose name we won't even grace on our presence, but had this proposed calendar, and it was atrocious. It was the most terrible thing. So I texted Micah, you remember this, I texted it to our mastermind of our personal peers, and I said, I'm just curious if anyone's calendar looked like this, and everyone universally came back and said, no, if my calendar looked like this, I'd be out of business.
I wouldn't get anything done.
I would, but it looked like, even when I looked at it, I thought for a second, Mike, I thought, wow, that's really, look at that calendar. They're going from this to this to this and this and this.
Super intentional.
And then I thought, wait a second, I've never seen a successful person actually use this calendar. And the reason I kind of rant on that is it's very seductive to get into this idea of, well, some expert said I should do my practice this way, even though they've never had a practice and they really don't know what works, because what works on paper is not the same as what works in real life.
All right, so let's take a little example on this, right?
Yeah, please.
We do surge meetings. And why do we do surge meetings? Well, one, because it works.
Because it works, yes.
Why does the industry do moving to surge meetings? Because it works. It was just Matt and I saying, oh my gosh, this is a great idea. We love it, but it didn't actually work. You would not see the wildfire that's taken off across this industry about surge meetings and why people are doing it. Okay. Why does it work? It works because of peak performance. It works because of deep work, right? It works from those concepts in there that I'm doing this task, back to Henry Ford, right? I'm doing this same task and getting really, really good at it over time. Well, if it works so well for clients and so well for delivering value, why would I do the complete opposite of that all the rest of the time? That's really the question that's there. When we saw this calendar, right, it was just hodgepodge of jumping between different tasks. It's start off with compliance, then read a book, then have a team meeting, then move to this other, and going through all these other things. It was like, oh my gosh, that's not the same activities. One of the reasons Surge works is it's the same type of activity you're going through. So your off Surge time needs to be scheduled in the same way. You need to have the same types of activities grouped together. That doesn't mean it needs to be the same intensity of what Surge is, but if you're saying, hey, this works because I'm doing the same things again and again, and it delivers more value, why wouldn't I take that same recipe somewhere else?
Yep. Another place that rears its head is your interactions with your team members. right? How does that happen? If you guys are doing instant messages back and forth or emails back and forth, that is playing office. It's destructive to all productivity. And I think, Micah, so much of this goes back to a task comes to our mind, either because it randomly occurred or because it popped up or alerted or whatever the case may be, or we saw the piece of paper on our desk, and that task doesn't have somewhere to live. And so our brain says, I've got to think about that right now at the expense of everything else I was working at. Successful advisors, successful entrepreneurs give everything a place to live. Oh, a compliance question comes up. Cool. Mike, I know you do the same thing. I keep a document that's open all year, not open all year long, but it's going all year long. Items for next year's ADV. Yep. Right. So we're in the middle of ADV renewals right now, and it had the list that I've worked on for the entire year. So when something comes to mind, like, I've got this thing I want to make sure is on our ADV next year, I open up that document, I type it in, I close the document. I don't stop and say, let me research this. Let me call 3 people. Let me email the compliance attorney. Let me ask a team member about this. And unless it was some urgent thing, everything has a place to live. Personal development has a place to live. Prospecting has a place to live. Everything needs a place to live. If you're being reactive, you're playing office, nothing's getting done.
One of the things that I do with my assistant is, and sometimes I'm pretty guilty of sending IMs to the team. Sure. Now I'm very good about not responding to them, by the way, just shutting them off, etc. So I don't have notifications going, but I will use that in the same thing. Jarvis, if I'm not in a place that I wish to spend the time getting into my phone, opening things up because I'm traveling with the family, etc., I'll open it up in IM real quick and I'll shoot off a quick message. Hey, add this to this agenda, add it to this agenda, etc. And then it frees it from my mind, which is just amazing. If I said, hey, when I get home, after I'm done with X activity, I need to open up my computer and do this. I'm going to be thinking about this the entire day, or I'm going to forget and it's going to be missed, versus this is a great reason to have an assistant. Open it up, shoot them a message. It's their responsibility to grab that instant message string, and then bring it into the agenda. And one of the things that I love about it, Jarvis, is I'll kind of do that. And then we have our weekly check-in. I'll be like, oh, that's a good question. Oh yeah, that was my question. It mentally frees it from my space where I don't have to worry about it. But now the team can engage in those things.
Yeah, and so that might actually go even further, Micah, and say anytime you're trying to keep things, you're trying to remember, like, hey, I need to remember that, or you're trying to keep track of it in your mind, that's playing office as well. We could, without being overly broad, anything that's not advancing your productivity is playing office, right? So me trying to remember something that's not advancing your productivity, that's playing office. Even things as simple as the retirement tax services tax guide that you and I both keep laminated on our desk.
Right.
I could try to commit to memory, and I used to in the past, what's the top and bottom of every tax bracket? Now I know them in general specs, but if I can just look there and see that, I don't need to spend my brain power on let me memorize what it is for this year. Let me just have the cheat sheet handy. So there's so many little things, and we see these consistently. Mike, you and I have now talked to, I must be thousands of advisors, and we see the same patterns. We see the patterns of playing office in advisors that aren't successful, and we see the patterns of success in successful advisors.
Jarvis, I'm smiling because I remember younger in my career, and where more successful advisors and older advisors, someone would ask him, like, what's the contribution limit to a Roth IRA? And they're like, that's a great question. They'd open up a tax guide and they would look at it. I'm like, how the hell do you not know what the limit? Now I'm like, that's a great question. I grabbed my tax guide, right? Because they learned what I did. And I thought knowing those numbers would be the key to success and not success, right? Having all those at top of hand. And the answer is no, that's not. Now I know exactly where to get that answer from and how I can grab that, but me knowing that exact number is irrelevant to my success or not. I need to have a reference guide for it. My success needs to be committed to that client communication and value I can deliver to them. And it's not having tax brackets memorized. 100% agreed.
Yeah, Micah, the last area of playing office that comes to mind for me is any time you spend justifying or victimizing yourself for failure or success. Right. So let's use, maybe think of it, you're using that example, right? Like, how is that advisor serving so many more clients and making so much more money than me? They can't even remember the top of the 37% tax bracket. Right. So anytime you find yourself in that space, or you know what, I'm a real advisor because I'm a fiduciary flat fee, double platinum gold member, and this guy's not, therefore I'm a better advisor if only people knew about it. I have 15 designations and the other guy doesn't have any. All headspace spent there is playing office. You're not getting anywhere. If you're in fact so smart and so noble and so guaranteed a path to heaven, then you should be having all the clients, or you need to stop back and say, wait a second, maybe I missed the mark here somewhere. Maybe I'm in fact not as smart as I think I am.
All right, so maybe this is going too deep, but this will be fun. So I was listening to a JBP podcast, Jordan Peterson, and one of the things he talks about about when we start tearing down those that are more successful than us, that's envy. And that's one of the reasons that communism worked so well, is because what it said is saying, hey, it's not that you're not doing a good job. It's the people that had money that are more successful, is that they stole the money. And that's the reason we should tear down their success and take away their money and strip them and then kill hundreds of millions of people, right? It was because of envy that we had for other person. So again, in this aspect is really take a hard look at that. If you start tearing down somebody else just because they're more successful than you, you got a lot of head trash going on that you need to start recalibrating and rethinking about how do I put this in a productive mindset? Because odds are they didn't steal the money. They didn't take advantage of a client. They were just a hell of a lot better.
Odds are, yeah.
Odds are they're a hell of a lot better at delivering value than you are. So own up to it, be a man and say, great, how am I going to improve? How am I going to be better and step up to the next level?
I love it. Well, on that note of how do I improve? How do I step up to the next level? This podcast is all about taking action, right? It's not enough to listen to this episode and say, oh, that's really cute playing office. I'll try not to do that. You've got to have action in your life that makes a difference there. Michael, one thing that comes to mind for me is just a simple reminder. I used to, from time to time, I don't right now, I used to keep just a plain rubber band around my wrist. It is an old kind of a mental hack. Now, I did it whenever I felt discouraged at work. When I felt discouraged, I would pull that rubber band back and I would snap it on the wrist, and it would give me a physical interrupt to that thought process. Also works to catch yourself playing office, right? So when you see like, oh, I'm getting flooded with dopamine because I'm, commenting on whatever, snap that rubber band, get up and stretch and get back to work. Have that list of things that are really productive that you can get back to.
I love it. I'm going to say if you were an advisor of one, or if you have, when we went through the list of things and, that is not playing office, which is prospecting, client meetings, value add, strategic planning, et cetera. And you said, oh my gosh, I don't have any time for that. I'm so busy with other things. One of two things is happening. One, you need to hire another team member in order to delegate those things. Or number two, you're still spending time in office and you need to make a hard decision and stop. So get out that sticky note, get out the notes, whatever you're going to do, write down what are those top things that are not playing office. It's the most valuable part of your time, and have that front and center.
Boy, Mike, I think you hit just right on the head one of those indicators that you're playing office. Anytime you tell yourself, I don't have time, you're playing office. I guarantee every single time without fail, anytime someone says, hey, I don't have time, you're playing office, because Elon Musk is getting a rocket to Mars after making electric cars, an online payment program, and a satellite internet system with the same 24 hours. So anytime you tell yourself, hey, I don't have time, you are playing office. Speaking of making time, next week on Wednesday, March 29th, Micah, you and I are doing a webinar for the Power Session for the entire nation on the one big mistake that is holding back your practice. I'm really excited for this. We're going to look at the 5 symptoms of the one big mistake that's holding back your practice from double. You can go to theperfectria.com and get signed up for that Power Session.
Awesome. Jarvis, as always, it's a blast. And until next time, happy planning.
Happy planning.
Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice.